Hello students, so in this particular video we are going to discuss about the weekly current affairs of this particular week. The first topic that we have to cover is related to thermal injustice and heat crisis in India. So when you talk about thermal injustice, what is this entire concept all about? So first of all, why was it in news? So in this particular summer, recent summer, what we have witnessed is extreme rise, alarming rise we can say, in the extreme heat wave events. This has been predicted by Indian Meteorological Department also, that number of heat wave days that we will see, especially in the peninsular regions of India, northwestern regions of India, would be quite higher. And on that basis, if you look at the districts that we have in India, over 57% of districts have been classified as heat prone. That means these districts are very vulnerable to heat effects, heat waves, heat effect related strokes and diseases and all. And overall, it is believed by many experts that what do we have in India is a kind of legislative vacuum, a policy gap that further increases and worsens the vulnerability based on the socio-economic status of individual, especially those people who are working in informal sector, those people who do not have the support and safety of the what you can call as the support that is given to the formal workers. They face wrath of this heat wave more. Heat waves are emerging as what you can call as the systematic socio-economic and human right crisis. It is no longer a climate crisis, it is no longer a weather crisis, but its effect can be seen on the socio-economic and human dimensions as well. Now, if you take a look at the numbers here, as we have discussed, 57% of the districts in India that host 76% of population are under high heat risk, and this risk is much more higher in the urban areas. Why urban areas? Because in urban areas we experience heat island effect. Heat island effect means urban areas, and if you look at the surrounding rural areas, the temperature of the urban areas are 3, 4, even sometimes 5 degrees Celsius higher than rural areas. That means urban area comes out as an island of heat surrounded by the cooler region. And this is because of the construction. If you talk about the roads that you have in urban areas, these are pakka metal roads made up of asphalt. They absorb strong insolation, and that's why, because they absorb more radiation, more solar radiation, what happens is the temperature rises significantly. Compare that with rural areas where you have more greenery, more natural environments such as lakes, ponds, you have kacha roads, you have the houses that is made up of mud, bricks and all. Those areas absorption is lesser. So rural areas temperature is high, urban area temperature is much more higher. Rural area temperature is low, urban area temperature is much more higher. This entire effect is what we call as urban heat island effect. Disproportionate impact is seen and felt by the poor, marginalized and the women section. Largely people who are living in urban areas, who are living in overcrowding conditions, slum like conditions, who do not have support of strong infrastructure, cooling facilities, right? Those are the people who are largely at disadvantage, largely faces disadvantage because of this thermal inequality. And it is in this context topic that is being talked about here is the right to cooling, because article 21 of constitution gives us right to life, and this life is not any kind of life but a kind of fulfilling life, a kind of comfortable life. So that's why we are talking about the right to cooling. Every individual in India should have this right. They should not be forced to face the pressure of the rising temperature. Wealthy people are able to get this right easily because they have access to the cooling equipment such as air conditions, insulated housings they can get access to, private transportation, they have AC cars and all. So even while walking or even while moving outside, do not have to go in the discomfort zone. While those people who are relatively poor, who cannot afford AC and coolers, they are forced to depend on the older methods such as fans, taking this opportunity to rest in shade whenever they are walking or going outside to work. And also in the urban centers, urban areas, we do not have adequate infrastructure where poor people can rest to get rid from or to get comfort from the harsh climate or severe climate. And overall, about 400 to 490 million people in India are working in the informal sector. They lack this cooling autonomy, and that's why their livelihood is also at risk, because if they go out to work, they face the wrath of heat wave. Many times, due to coming in the contact of this heat wave, working harsh in these conditions, their health also deteriorates. That further impact the entire family and further throws them in the poor condition, poverty like condition. Impact on workers in economy, if we try to examine, survival dilemma is their health versus income, because a person has to decide that today it is too hot outside, it is heat wave like condition, there's a possibility of heat strokes, heat related diseases. In that condition, should they stay in home or they have to go out? Because if they do not go out to work, many times they have daily livelihood. That means when they work entire day, that's only when they have money so that they can get food for their entire family. So this dilemma is what called as survival dilemma. And anyway, if they do not go outside, they will have impact on the survivability because they have no access to food. If they go outside, then again there is an issue of survivability because they might have some diseases. High risk people are those who are working in construction sector because they have to stay outdoors in the hot sun for extended duration of time, for the entire day, we can say. Vendors who have to put carts outside in the roads, they have to be also staying outside in the harsh sunlight. Sanitation worker. And as per 2024 estimate, 247 billion labor hours India has lost because of the heat wave like effect and climatic crisis. Overall 194 US billion dollar US dollar 194 billion US dollars we have lost in the income because of this, and that's why it is emerging as a public health concern as such. Rise in heat strokes are being reported from various parts of India. Illnesses, mortality, if we talk about. Vulnerable people are those who have, first of all, weaker immunity, such as elderly people, children who are more prone to heat-related sickness and diseases, and also pregnant women as such. And many times, issue is also raised that we might not be actually counting the number of death number of risky population that is at risk due to heat wave like effect due to the weak surveillance mechanism. So example, person might have died, the actual cause would be written like fever, but if you try to look, this fever was caused due to the heat related diseases, heat stroke as such. So the counting is normal fever like death, but that is because of heat related. So health system burden is expected to increase and is further increasing as well because of this. Now, what is the legal and policy gap that we should try to fill if we really want to ensure that heat wave do not cause livelihood crisis, do not cause survival challenges for majority of people in India? First is, till now, we know that majority of all of the disasters, major disasters in India are classified under DMAC, Disaster Management Act. Under the NDMA Act of 2005, heat wave still has not been notified as a disaster. Now, because heat wave is not notified as a disaster, SDRF, that is State Disaster Response Force, NDRF, that is National Disaster Response Force, these are special forces we have created to intervene in case of natural disaster. Because heat wave is not a disaster, these forces are not able to use, these forces we are not able to utilize in the case of such things. They also face funding limits. For heat wave related comfort, they cannot access news funding as such. Weak labor laws further complicate the situation because employers do not have this what you can call as a restriction that they have to ensure well-being of their employees, because Factories Act, the OSHA, that is the Occupational Safety and Hazard Act, these acts are not applicable on the contractual employee, on the informal employees, and that's how the companies or organizations are trying to basically shed their responsibility, shrug off their responsibilities. Advisory heat action plans we have created, but the problem is enforcement mechanism is missing there. We do not have any enforcement. No wage compensation, gig worker protection. Again, we have discussed because most of the informal employees are there. They are not brought under these legislative actions. Heat classification ignores humidity, and that's why government recently has decided to take a good action where they would release heat index. So basically, what is heat index and what is heat classification based on humidity? We can try to understand by what is the actual temperature that you are measuring in the environment, in the atmosphere, and how much hot are you actually feeling. There is a kind of difference between them, because if you are living in an area where temperature is high, at the same time humidity level is higher. If you are living in high humid condition, body's natural cooling mechanism through sweating does not work, so you will feel more hot compared to the prevailing temperature. If you are living in the environment where low humidity level is lower, your body's natural cooling mechanism will work effectively, and you would feel relatively lower temperature because cooling effect is taking place. So we have to also take into consideration what is the humidity level at a particular place to understand what is the actual impact of heat being faced by the people, not the theoretical value we are measuring by temperature, by measuring by thermometer as such. So heat index would take into consideration not only temperature but also humidity level at a given place. The second topic we have to study is about the effect of global warming and how the global warming seems to be weakening the sea land bridge system that we see taking place in the coastal areas. Now, first of all, let us try to understand what is global warming. So, in simple way, we can explain global warming is a long-term increase in Earth's average surface temperature. That is also increase in the atmospheric temperature and mainly caused by human activities. We know that since the industrial revolution, you have kept on emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, whether it is carbon dioxide through industrial emission, through vehicular emission, or whether methane and other kind of gases like SO2, N2O, all of these are greenhouse gases. Now, what are greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gases act as a blanket around our planet and they do not allow the radiation, the energy that is being lost by Earth's surface to escape in the outer space. The radiation lost by the terrestrial surface, lost by the land surface, heat lost by the land surface, they are basically trapped within the atmosphere. What is the resulting effect? Overall warming of the temperature. So that is what we call as global warming. Global warming plays a very important role and is the main reason behind climate change, and also they are the responsible for extreme weather. Global warming also causes rise in sea level by rapid melting of glaciers as such. Now, what is the effect we are witnessing right now is over sea breach and land breach. So let us try to first of all understand both of them. So when you talk about the sea breach or land breach, in coastal areas, suppose this is the coastal area, this is sea surface and this is the land surface. Now what actually happens if you talk about summer months or daytime when sunlight is falling on both these surfaces, land heats up at a fast rate. That's why temperature over land is higher. Sea heats up at a slow rate. That's why temperature over sea is lower. Now, high temperature means air above it will rise up. That means to create low pressure condition because air is moving away from the surface. Here, air is cooler, so it remains near the surface, creating high pressure condition. So, over sea you have high pressure, over land you have low pressure. So air naturally begins to move from high pressure to low pressure areas. This is what we call as sea breeze, because breeze is slow movement of air from sea toward land. Now because the sea breeze is coming from the colder ocean surface, sea surface, they reduces the temperature. Thus it produces cooling effect. In the winter or night time, land becomes much more cooler. And because land is cooler now, over land you will have high pressure and sea surface is relatively warmer. That means over sea you will have low pressure. So during winter or night time, wind blows from land to sea. This is what we call as land breeze. Now, because land breeze is continuously removing air from the land surface, it does not allow air to stay at one place and it is not allowed to cool down significantly. So colder air is continuously being removed, replaced by warmer air. So it produces a kind of warming effect. That means in essence we can say that sea breeze produces cooling effect during daytime or summer. Land breeze produces warming effect during night time or winters, and it is because of these breezes in the summer and winter in the coastal area, temperature neither increases much nor decreases much. So they produce what we can call as moderating influence on the local weather. Now what is the key finding of the study? Studies suggest that the ocean temperature is continuously rising because of global warming. 80% of heat that is released in atmosphere is trapped by the ocean itself. And because of this, now sea is absorbing more heat. That means the contrast that you had between land and sea, temperature contrast that you had between land and sea, which is the driving force behind breezes, that contrast is reducing. And as per the data, roughly 3% decline we have seen in the number of sea breeze days experienced in the coastal areas. This sharper decline is largely being witnessed in the mid-latitude cities, in temperate regions. Why? Because that's where the effect of absorption is felt to a greater extent. And it is believed by scientific community that by 2050, it may weaken further. The sea breeze days, sea breeze may weaken by 4.5 times faster as compared to now. Now what is going to be the possible impact of this? As I told you, sea breeze produces cooling effect. So that cooling effect will no longer be seen. That means during summer, temperature would rise significantly. That means increased urban temperature, increased urban heat will see. Cities such as Mumbai, Chennai, these cities which are having moderating influence of breezes, these cities will also experience severe summer and winter. Reduce natural cooling, because as we have discussed, land breeze produces cooling, sea breeze produces cooling effect. Now sea breeze will become weaker, cooling effect would weaken. Air pollution will worsen. Why air pollution worsen? Very interesting. Because when the breezes are continuously moving in the coastal areas, they are transporting away all the pollutant particles, whether released by the industries, whether released by the construction activities, whether released by the vehicular emission. And if these breeze becomes weaker, pollution will, or pollutant particles we can say actually, will stay over the urban areas for a longer duration. They will keep building up and will cause severe impact on the health of people, higher health risks, especially for vulnerable populations such as children, such as old age people, who will get more lung related disorders, respiratory infections, diseases and all that. And also it reduces the habitability. Habitability means the possibility of living in a urban areas with enjoying a good quality of life, while enjoying cleaner air, cleaner water, that things will further reduce. That means the habitability of cities are expected to reduce in the coming future. Third topic is related to the India Free from Moist Insurgency 2026. We know that on 31st March 2026, Government of India, or more specifically you can say Ministry of Home Affairs, released a statement where it stated that India now has become Maoist free. There is no longer Maoist insurgency, and this has largely brought relief in the left-wing extremism affected areas of India, that largely last pockets we have seen being in the Chhattisgarh and the central part of India. Now, during the time of LWE or Maoist insurgency, we have seen the government was not able to reach to the people here because local Maoists themselves were running parallel government, which they used to call as a Janatan Sarkar. So 2026 we have declared and marked the end of the left-wing extremism, end of this organized insurgency as such. So what is going to be the strategic and internal security impact? First of all, as Janatan Sarkar were being run by Maoist, state agencies were missing in action, state government was not able to communicate and go with the people, go to the people. So we'll see restoration of state sovereignty, end of liberated zones, re-establishment of constitutional governance, and implementation of 5th and 6th schedule provisions. We know that 5th schedule ensures that you have the panchayat extension in all the schedule areas, such 6th schedule ensures autonomy and more services, more facilities for the tribal areas. So government was not able to do so because these areas were under the control of Naxals and they pose a threat to the state agency as such. Now, its impact would be seen also by the security forces, because to fight Naxalism, we had deployed Central Armed Police Forces, and majority of CAPF battalions were deployed in the Naxal affected areas. Now, since Naxalism is no longer a problem for us, we can redeploy over 100 plus battalions because they are being freed from counter-insurgency, counter-Naxal operation role, and they can be used for the border security to strengthen our border more. They can also be used to tackle other internal security problems, law and order problems. CRPF also are being deployed to ensure free and fair elections are being conducted. So those things we can do because now they are free. Plus also we had problem in CRPF, CAPF, they are not able to give proper leave and recuperation, rest and recuperation because of the continuous deployment. So it will be also beneficial for the personals because the sanction leave they would be able to get. Strengthen administrative reach of government also in these areas. Plus economic transformation is going to be going to be the major impact, because in the central part of India, eastern part of India, there was a resource curse. What is resource curse? This area like Chhattisgarh talk about, they are rich in coal reserves, they are rich in iron ore reserves, they have rich reserves for bauxite. Despite presence of all these resources, companies were not willing to invest. Why? Because of the security risk, because of the presence of Naxalism. So it is possible that resource unlocking we will see in the Bastar and Saranda district. More investment would flow here, domestic as well as foreign investment, because of the a peaceful situation that will prevail due to the end of Naxalism. Shift to market-based economy. More private agencies would now start to enter into these areas and will lead to development of a market. And plus, tribals who are using minor forest produce to generate their livelihood, they would be benefiting from the minimum support prices which government agencies would now be able to provide to them, as they can go in this area, procure the materials from the tribals, and that is no longer possible. That was no longer possible before. Socio-political constitutional impact is going to be there as well, deepening democracy. Earlier, there was rule of bullet. Now, the bullet rule will be replaced by ballot rule. Ballot rule, people in this area would be able to participate in the democratic process, will be able to participate in the free and fair elections, and thus can elect their representatives who will hear their voices and will work on their issues, problems, would bring fruits of development in these areas. Higher voter participation we might see as well, because many people were not early voting due to the fear of Naxal, as Naxals had asked these people, they were threatening these people to boycott the elections. End of Maoist court Janadars were being conducted, which was a kind of illegal court system, and implementation of Forest Right Act, that was a revolutionary act we brought in year 2006. Those acts we can again implement in these areas. Social and developmental outcomes is going to be there as well. The youth population, which was largely facing issue due to the survivability of survival of Naxalism, there we can see now Eklavya Model Residential School providing them residential school facilities to tribal children. We can see skill development program like Roshni scheme can be implemented here, inclusive growth and tribal empowerment we can see. So overall, improved governance and service delivery are going to be one of the major benefit of the end of Naxalism. Youth population would be able to skill themselves, would be able to educate themselves, and can become part of the overall workforce, overall India's labor force as such. So that is the point. Now, next is industrial disaster in India, causes and implications. Now, in this case, we can take a look at the recent incident that we saw in the Vrudhunagar of Tamil Nadu, where we see an explosion in a fireworks factory. It highlights systemic gaps. Now, obviously, any such kind of industry, factories that are dealing with the hazardous chemical, fire, this we can talk about the fireworks and all that, there is inherent threat, inherent hazard. But apart from that, what makes this hazard turn into disaster is the systemic gaps, where enforcement of rules, laws, legislations are kind of, we can say, a kind of overlook. Regulations are there, but they are not being enforced. These are the challenges we are facing. So let us try to understand one by one. First is the regulatory and institutional failure. What experts suggested that we are trying to improve the ease of doing business in India, both for the foreign investors as well as domestic private investors. So we are trying to reduce the inspector Raj is a term that we use, where a lot of inspection was carried out and getting approvals for the new factories, new industries were very difficult in the early days. Now we are trying to reduce this inspector Raj, but there is a fallacy, because while trying to reduce the inspector Raj, we have created a vacuum in the monitoring of such institutions and factories. These inspectors were the one who ensure that all the rules, laws, legislations are being properly followed, all the safety regulations are being properly followed by the industries, and there is no lax on their part. Now what we are seeing is that there is a reduction of inspections. Why? Because over 40% of vacancies we have seen in the industrial inspector, and if inspectors are the authorities responsible for investigating the functioning of any industry, the safety of an industry, obviously that will ensure that enforcement is weaker, because you have vacancies. One inspector is responsible for handling over hundreds of factories. That becomes an impossible task for them because vacancy is very high. Fragmented regulatory framework, we are seeing a lot of overlapping jurisdiction. There's a lack of clarity between organizations, that what is their roles and responsibilities, what is their overall jurisdiction based on the this laws and rules. No unified chemical safety authority exists in India as such. There is a lot of policy loopholes and legal challenges we also face. For example, in boost to improve our ease of doing business, we have begun to ensure self certification for the industries. This is being done by third parties, and many times there is an element of corruption involved here. So they are able to get the certification when they should not be given certification. Many such incidents we have also. Plus the Occupational Safety Hazard Code 2020, it promotes self certification. So that is the issue here. MSMEs many times have seen to be falsified compliances by bribing the officials. Many times it is not being checked properly because you have lack of inspectors. Political shielding of violator, because many times in the industries, factories, you have political interest as well. Local politicians might be involved. Local, we can talk about influential person might be involved. So they try to shield the violators because their main focus is to earn as much profit as possible, even if it leads to violation of the safety code. Shell companies evade liability. Many times a company, a factory, there has been hazard, now they should be shut down. But what happens? The factory simply changes their name, again begins to operate from some other areas. While doing so, they also are able to bypass the doctrine of absolute liability. This is very important doctrine because doctrine of absolute liability was given by Supreme Court, where it states that any industry or factory working in the area of hazardous chemicals or any such kind of product have absolute liability in case of any disaster emanating from their industry as such. So they are able to bypass it by changing the name, by using shell companies. Based on MC Mehta case, that is when the doctrine of absolute this liability was given. So overall, we can say that how are they able to evade such laws, such doctrines? Because of the weak enforcement. Other effect of this is felt mainly by the labor, because most of these factories have outsourced the work, especially high risk work such as hazardous work. We can say like 50 to 70% of hazardous work is being conducted by informal workers. These informal workers are temporary workers, so that's why industries and factory do not invest a lot of money, resources in providing them safety training as such. So most of this hazardous work is being done by unskilled contract labor. Now companies also do not worry about them much, because if they were on the payroll of companies, if some untoward incident happen, companies will have to take full responsibility. They have to ensure that their full treatment is given to them, and if the person is not able to work in the case of permanent disability, company have to provide pension and other compensation. If on the other hand, laborers are unskilled and contract laborers, ex gratia settlement is more than enough to take care of their needs. That is what the root of company applies. So loss of buffer zones we are seeing, urban encroachment we are seeing by industrial companies, industry as such. And because earlier industrial pockets were far away from the this we can call as urban settlement pockets, now what we are seeing, continuously both are coming together. So if any industrial disaster and accidents happen in today's environment, the risk on the urban community is much more higher. In the case of release of poisonous gases, in case of large scale blast in the boiler or other such kind of vessels in the companies, the people living in the nearby areas will be on the receiving end. Industrial and supply chain issues we also have, because many times factories are still using aging infrastructure. They are not investing in improving the infrastructure by changing, by modifying, by repairing wherever it is required. Outdated plants are continuously being allowed to run in India. Again, what is the problem? Lack of proper investigation, inspection. No modernization investment. Why? Because if you are going on the modernization investment route, if you are trying to improve your infrastructure, update your infrastructure, it would require capital. That capital will come from the profit share, and industry do not want to compromise with their profit share. That's why they try to run as much as possible on such infrastructure which are a persistent hazard, not only to the workers but also to the nearby community itself. Supply chain volatility we also see, like for example, we take case of the recent Strait of Hormuz disruption. Now because LPG crisis we are seeing in India, many chemicals are not able to come, fertilizers are not able to come. So the factories that are working in India, many times they cannot get the safe raw material, so they switch to unsafe substitute material. That further increases and amplifies the risk. Plus many times they are working on over the capacity what that particular plant, particular equipment can handle. So if they are trying to increase their production more than what they should do, that further complicates the situation. It creates a environment of chemical instability that increases risk manifold. If we talk about the macro and governance implications of this entire thing, economic impact is going to be tremendous, because if there is a risk that wherever you are investing, there is a hazard, persistent hazard, there is a lot of industrial disaster, accidents, hazards taking place, there is a chance of reduced FDI. China plus one is affected. China plus one means that most of the Western companies, they consider China as, or traditionally they have considered China as their major source of investment, plus one other country they want to have as a backup where they can move factories, move production in case of need. That country was India. But if such disasters become common, in that case, that would reduce the FDI's interest in India. Dead assets such as non-performing assets, they will also be a burden for the balance sheets of the banks, financial institutions. Governance will be impacted. Erosion of state credibility. For example, we have seen Bhopal gas tragedy in 1980s. So for many years, the victims of Bhopal gas tragedy has to keep fighting for the compensation for the ordeal which they faced due to this disaster. Still, state was not able to many times provide them with compensation, and this has been seen many times as such. So that leads to erosion of state credibility. People lose trust that government would take any action if such disasters occur in the future. Bhopal tragedy we have seen. Plus, we have seen also in many cases, like in recently Tamil Nadu, there is a rise in civilian protest. When people feel that government has turned we can call it turned a kind of deaf eyes to their demands, there is no other option but to carry out protest as such. Such protest also disrupt the other industries that might be working well. Such protests bring economic instability and also cause loss of what you can call as the economic resources. Social and environmental implications are going to be there because socio-demographic effect, as we have seen, most of time the workers who are affected by such disasters are the sole earning member of the family. So if that person's income generating ability is affected because of disability, because of permanent disability, because of death, the entire family has a risk of falling in the poverty trap. Plus long-term health issues we have seen in the case of nuclear disasters in the Japan. Many times the health impact is not limited to the time when disasters happen, but its effect can be felt many years ahead from one generation to other generation. Bhopal gas tragedy is also an example where congenital deformities was seen amongst the children who were born even when they were not who were born after the Bhopal gas tragedy as such. Environmental damages we see because if the industrial pollutant are released uncontrollably, if we talk about radiation leakages, if we talk about the poisonous gases and chemicals being released in the atmosphere, soil and water gets contaminated, and that can remain contaminated for a long duration, prolonged time duration as such. That is the other point. Plus, it also amplifies natic disaster. Natic disaster refers to the natural and technical disaster. So, a natural disaster such as tsunami, a natural disaster such as cyclone, when it damages any industrial plant in the coastal areas, any hazardous chemical factories in coastal areas, the disaster effect is multiplied. And Environmental Protection Act 1986 in India we have that basically ensure that such what you can say that such disasters we can we can try to minimize. Now the next is new deportation policy for migrants. This new policy has been brought in by the Ministry of Home Affairs. It is an initiative of Ministry of Home Affairs with the sole focus of identifying and deporting illegal migrants, largely those migrants who have come in India from Myanmar or from Bangladesh. So these are the two target reasons. MHA has introduced it, and the reason behind introduction is to focus on national security and migration control. So what are the new policies or new plans? First plan is that in every district where illegal migration has become a common occurrences, a district level task force would be instituted. This special task force would have responsibility to detect all the undocumented migrants living in those areas. They have to identify and then process deportation. Once the migrants are identified that they have been living without proper documents, illegally they have been living, or they have overstayed their visa, they will be identified and processed to deportation center from where they can be sent to their original country, home country. Monthly reports on overstaying foreigners would also be published by these task force. Second is verification of timeline. That means for identity verification of any undocumented migrants and refugees, maximum 90 days has been given, and this applies to suspected Bangladeshi or Myanmarese nationals only. Third is includes those who are claiming residence in the other state as well. For example, based on the intel input, the agencies can understand that the person entered illegally through the Assam border, but now is going and living in West Bengal or further any other states of India. So those will also be included here. Now the people who have been identified as undocumented migrants, they will be placed in holding center or camps. For that, dedicated centers will be created. Now government has clearly stated that it will not be jail. The centers would not be run from jail. It would be a dedicated center with basic facilities available to the people. So 10 feet boundary with barbed wires will be constructed all around the center, so people are not able to easily escape. Separate enclosures for men and women. Third is medical care, LPG connection, and open access will be provided so that people are not feeling that they are living in a jail because they have not committed a heinous crime. They are simply living in a detention center. And if a family, entire family has entered India illegally and they are caught together, it has to be ensured that the family members are not segregated, separated. They are able to live together even in detention center. So this also is based on the human rights that we have enforced it. Legal and administrative measures also will take into account. It applies to foreigners tribunal declared individuals. Foreigners tribunal is a tribunal that is largely run by district magistrate, and illegal documents to be uploaded and then has to be cancelled. Deported migrants will be further blacklisted from entering India, and that to ensure that same person is not able to repeatedly violate the law. Technology and Border Protocol also has been instituted here. Foreigners Identification Portal has been established where all the undocumented migrants, if they are caught, their detailed information would be put here. Biometric data would be collected. So the next time if he is able to, or if he is trying to infiltrate the border, enter the border, and if he is caught again, we can see that he is repeat offender. So stern action can be taken. Immediate deportation after biometrics can also be carried out. Innocent crossers may be handed back. Now innocent crossers means many times in the border regions of India, there is no clear-cut dividing line. There is a physical border such as hills, forest. So sometimes people mistakenly also cross border. So if they are caught by the border security forces, border security guards, in that case they will be handed back to the border security forces of the other countries. So Bangladeshi Rangers in case of Bangladesh. Need for the policy comes from the picture that historical migration issue has been a problem for the northeastern region, specifically after the partition of India, especially in the aftermath of 1971 war. Security concerns also rises because recent terror incidents have been linked to the illegal migrants entering India, illegal infiltrators entering India, and especially this becomes a risk because of geopolitical instability in the neighboring countries. Myanmar is in throngs of civil war. So many Kuki tribal community belonging to Kuki tribes have entered India illegally in the Manipur and Mizoram state as such. Resources and demographic pressure also is faced by these states because if more number of people, illegal migrants are coming, what state has to do? They have to take care of these people as well. So resources are basically consumed by these illegal migrants, and also because they're coming in large number, local people gets affected as it results in demographic changes. So these all are the reasons why MHA has to bring in this new particular policy. Now, if you look at few of the question, which of the following is a feature of the new deportation policy introduced by the Ministry of Home Affairs? A. No time limit for verification of suspected migrant. B. Establishment of district level special task force. C. Housing migrants in rural prisons. D. Allowing migrants to retain their documents after deportation. Obviously, the correct answer is B. Establishment of district level special task force. Second we have discussed is thermal injustice. With reference to thermal injustice, consider the following statement. It refers to the unequal exposure and vulnerability of different social groups to extreme heat. That is correct. Informal workers in India largely possesses adequate cooling autonomy due to public infrastructure. No, public infrastructure is missing in India. Cooling autonomy is largely enjoyed by the rich classes. Urban heat island effect contribute to higher temperature in densely built urban area. Correct, because albedo effect come into picture here. Urban areas have such kind of structures which absorb more solar energy. Heat waves are currently classified as notified disaster in the Disaster Management Act. That is also incorrect. That is the policy vacuum, legislative vacuum. Heat waves are not classified as notified disaster under DM Act. That means second, fourth statement is correct. The only correct statement is first and three. So A should be the right option. Next question is, consider the following statement regarding sea land bridge system in the context of global warming. Sea bridge occurs due to differential heating between land and sea during the day. That is correct. Land heats up faster, so has high temperature, low pressure. Sea heats up slower, so has low temperature, high pressure. Land bridge occurs when the sea cools faster than the land at night. That is incorrect. Land bridge occurs when the land cools faster than sea at night, and that's why land cooling more, low temperature, high pressure. Wind moves from land to sea. That's land bridge. Rising ocean temperature reduces the land's thermal contrast, weakening sea bridges. This is absolutely correct. Temperature is rising in the ocean, so the temperature difference between land and ocean is reducing. That results in the weakening of sea bridge. So 3% of weakening we have seen. So what is the correct option? First and third. Yani ki A is the right option in this particular case. That is all for this particular video. Thank you very much.